In this segment, Ray Franz confronts his own personal situation. How do you leave God's organization, and how do you resign from God's governing body? In the autumn of 1979, I had an assignment to go on a zone visit to certain branch offices in West Africa. Some were in countries where the government had placed an official ban on the activity of Jehovah's Witnesses. Knowing how easily something could happen that might result in my being detained, possibly imprisoned, I felt an obligation to discuss some of my concerns with my wife. In view of her previous health problems, including a blood condition that nearly caused her death in 1969, I felt it best to make the trip alone. Though she could not help but be aware of the emotional strain I felt, I had never discussed with her the actual circumstances that produced that strain, what the real issues were that affected me. I had not felt free to do so. Now I felt not only that it was proper, but that I had an obligation to consider with her what I had become aware of, particularly in the light of the Scriptures. How could I let men hold me back from discussing with my own wife truths that I saw in the Word of God? This was also my experience in the year 1984 to 1986, although the doubts were welling up inside because of various Bible studies and challenges that I had met in field service or in Bible study, personal Bible study with people, as well as my own Bible study. I still did not feel comfortable to bring these things up, knowing that my wife would have a far harder time with this than I might have. My struggle was intellectual. Her struggle would have been, well, total. By that time, Ray Franz goes on, we concluded that the advisable course for us was to terminate our activity at the international headquarters. We felt that our peace of mind and heart, as well as our physical health, required it. We also had faint hopes that it might yet be possible to have a child, and we had, in fact, talked to 2 doctors about this, including one of the staff doctors, Dr. Carlton, on a confidential basis. I was 57, and I knew that it would be very difficult to find secular employment due to that factor, but I trusted that somehow things would work out. Ray Franz's wife was some 13 years younger than him, so she was at that very age, 44 or so, where having a baby would have been a crisis perhaps itself. The decision was not easy. I felt torn between 2 desires. On the one hand, I felt that remaining on the body, at least I could speak up on behalf of others' interests, on behalf of the truth of the Scriptures, on behalf of moderation and balance, even though my voice was heard with irritation or ignored. I sensed that the time span in which I could do that was rapidly shortening, that whatever voice I had in the governing body discussions would soon be shut out, silenced. The desire to be free from the suspicious atmosphere I saw developing, to be free from participation in an authority structure I could not scripturally defend, and decisions I could not morally condone, weighed equally heavy with me. If security and comfort were my aim, I certainly would have opted for staying where I was, for all our physical needs would have been provided for as part of the headquarters staff. Our long years of seniority would give us the choice of some of the better rooms that periodically became available in the Society's many large buildings. Our vacation time would increase to the equivalent of some 6 weeks a year, and because of being a governing body member, it would always be possible to combine this with speaking engagements that carried one to all points in the United States and Canada, or with some zone visits that took one to points all over the earth. Governing body members can regularly take their vacations and in places most people could only afford to dream about. In 1978, my wife and I found ourselves boarding planes over 50 times that one year, and over the years we had traveled to Central and South America, Asia, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. If prestige or prominence were what was sought, I could not reasonably have asked for more. I was already declining on a monthly basis about 3 or 4 invitations for speaking engagements for every one that I accepted. Internationally, if traveling to Paris, Athens, Madrid, Lisbon, Mexico City, Sao Paulo, or almost any other major city, it was only necessary to advise the branch office, and a meeting would be arranged to which thousands of Jehovah's Witnesses would flock. It became almost commonplace to address audiences ranging in size anywhere from 5,000 up to 30,000 persons. Practically anywhere a governing body member goes, he is a special guest of honor among his fellow witnesses. As for the governing body itself, it was quite evident to me that esteem from one's peers on the body could be assured simply by regularly voicing total support for the organization, and with rare exceptions by noting which way the majority inclined in discussions and speaking and voting that way. I am not being cynical in saying this. Those few others on the body who, on occasion, felt compelled to voice conscientious objections to certain traditional positions, policies, or teachings, know, even if they do not express it, that this is so. Even as it was, I had been assigned to membership on what might be called two of the more influential governing body committees, the Writing Committee and the Service Committee. The Writing Committee saw fit to assign me to oversee the development, not to do the actual writing thereof, of a number of publications printed eventually in many languages in the millions of copies. And if you want, by the way, a list of the men who actually wrote some of the major publications in the 1970s, he has such a list on page 228 of Crisis of Conscience. The formula, if it may be called that, for maintaining a position of prominence in the organization was easily discernible, but I could not find it conscientiously acceptable. I would have had to be blind not to have seen that my expressions on certain issues, motivated by what I felt were clear scriptural principles, did not please many on the body. There were times when I went to governing body sessions having decided simply not to speak, rather than to see animosity build. But when issues arose that could seriously affect the lives of people, I found I could not hold back from making some expressions I would have felt guilty not to have done so. I had no illusions that what I said would carry particular weight. In fact, I knew from experience that it would more probably only make my own situation more difficult, more precarious. But I felt that if I did not stand for something, for certain principles that I felt were crucial to Christianity, then there was no purpose in being there. For that matter, not much real purpose in life. What a sad place to be at the age of 57. He was finding groupthink was dominant on the governing body by the late 1990s, and that any rumblings of dissidents were being increasingly unwelcome. In the next segment, we'll deal with another parallel. In a parallel situation, Jerry Gladson, also a Seventh-day Adventist theologian, leaves his organization and, as he puts it, journeys all the way to mainstream Christianity. That was not the experience of Ray Franz, but Ray Franz, as we'll find out in later segments, his journey was far more gradual and did not have the same endpoint, but I believe he ended up in a place of humility, which is the desirable end for all of us when we think about it, isn't it?